Professor Timothy Snyder's new article in the Boston Globe is titled "The Political Logic of Trump's Violent Lawlessness." Professor Snyder writes, "The moral horror wrought by President Trump's second administration is incontrovertible. The aspiring tyrant looks for cracks in the system that can be pried open. One of these cracks is the border, where the country ends, because the law ends there too. An obvious move for the tyrant is to turn the whole country into a border where no rules apply. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin did this in the 1930s with border zones and deportations preceding the Great Terror. Adolf Hitler did it too in 1938 Germany with immigration raids that targeted undocumented Jews and forced them to flee the country. Trump, by his own admission and that of his cabinet members, is following the same playbook. The border becomes the pretext to undo the law everywhere, at all times, against everyone. It is the crack that can be opened." Joining us now is Timothy Snyder, professor of history at the University of Toronto. He's the author of the New York Times bestsellers On Freedom and On Tyranny. Professor Snyder, I'd like to begin with as the first question with really the title of your piece. What is the political logic of Trump's violent lawlessness?
In order to build tyranny, you have to open zones where the law doesn't apply and where the citizens will accept that the law doesn't apply. One zone like that is a concentration camp. Another zone like that is the border. The logic of what they've been doing with ICE is to take the border everywhere, to take border enforcement everywhere, to take the violence associated with border enforcement everywhere, to try to get the citizenry used to the idea that anywhere in America, at any time, there can be a zone of exception where anything is possible. That's the logic.
You write in your piece that the way the administration uses the word terrorist and extremist is very important to the way they're carrying this out. And we saw them use that word instantaneously after Alex Preddy was murdered.
Yeah, I mean, before I answer that politically, I just can't help but say that it's fundamentally indecent to speak that way of the dead. It's just fundamentally indecent. I mean, it's just a basic violation of everything. I mean, before we can get to America and the Constitution and politics, regardless of any circumstance, you simply don't speak of the dead that way. And when it's possible that you might bear responsibility, the first thing you ought to be doing is taking that responsibility. Okay, having said that, this is very familiar. The idea is to deny the victim their humanity, to turn them into a member of an abstract class, to turn that class into a threat. And calling people terrorists or extremists, or as Stephen Miller did in A Complete Lie, assassins. This is what tyrants do. They take away what's special and particular about us and try to turn us into enemies. And what's depressing about this is not just the evil of it, but the cliched character of it. This is exactly what Putin does. This is exactly what they all do. And we just can't fall for it. Happily, I think we're not falling for it.
You also write in your piece, there's so many language components to this. The invasion of the language and shifting language from neutral descriptions into loaded meanings, and that includes law enforcement. You say state terror is defined as, quote, law enforcement.
I think that sadly, and I think most sadly for people whose job it is, in fact, to enforce the law, what the administration is doing is they've turned law enforcement on its head. They're using it as a kind of verbal protection for any kind of action. It's a kind of magic phrase. As soon as we hear it, we're supposed to think that those people must be doing the right thing. But we have to use our eyes and our ears and our common sense and recognize that somebody wearing a mask who is trespassing, committing assault, committing battery, or committing murder, that is simply not enforcing the law. Enforcing the law is not a thing in the world. It's something you either do or you don't do. And when you're committing crimes, you're not enforcing the law, and you shouldn't be called law enforcement.
We heard Cardinal Tobin in the first segment there ask, how will you say no? And one of the points he made earlier in that video that we didn't show is that for the tyrant, someone just going out into the town square in the middle of the night and just writing the word no, that is in and of itself an act of resistance against the tyrant.
This is absolutely right. It's the beginning of resistance. It's saying no says, this is not normal for me. Saying no says, I've noticed that this has crossed a line. But saying no is also saying yes, because it's the moment where you recognize what are the values for which you will stand with other people, for which you will take some kind of a risk.
Professor Timothy Snyder, thank you very much for starting off our conversations tonight.